Hi friends! Today I'm going to be talking about this deck, the RainShadow Tarot by Mack. I'm going to start off with a mini review, but then the remainder chunk of this video is going to be a deep dive where I'm just going to sort of go on an intuitive riff, if you will. Just take a look at each of the cards and yeah, just have some fun exploring all of the amazing details on them. So let's start with the mini review. And as you might have already guessed, I love this deck. And the main reason for that is because I feel like this deck has helped me immensely with working those intuitive muscles. I'm the kind of person who looks at a card and then instinctively I'll start to try analyzing the symbols, colors, placement of things, and then I'll have the tendency to want to go to a guidebook and just find out everything. And that's why I love guidebooks, because they offer so much information. But this deck, and just look at the guidebook. It is a small little guidebook, but really, this is all you need for this deck. The artwork just gives so much room for your own interpretation. So I think what this booklet has to offer is really more than sufficient. So yeah, I love just how this deck has really helped me get back into a more intuitive style of reading, and it is just so great for that. The next thing that I love about this deck, of course, is the artwork. I've always wanted one of Mack's decks for her very distinctive, earthy, textured, collage style artwork. And despite it having darker color tones, to me, this deck still has a very delicate feel to it. And I feel like the colors are very balanced and not overly heavy, like you can see in the sixes very clearly. So it just works so wonderfully for all kinds of readings. And I do feel like this deck is quite neutral in that sense. I do tend to use this deck more on a day-to-day basis, but I could totally see it being used for more like sort of in-depth self-reflection journeys as well. Like this deck doesn't feel associated with one specific purpose, if you know what I mean. And this might just be me, but I'm not huge on people in my cards. I don't know why. So this deck has a lot of cards that don't show people, and instead there are quite a lot of animals in it, which is a pleasant surprise. Also, this deck I would say is somewhat loosely Rider-Waite-Smith based. So for example, you have like, say the Seven of Pentacles, and it still preserves that kind of RWS style where someone is kind of like looking at the pentacles and pondering. Or say like the Four of Swords, and you can see that kind of like contemplation happening there, right? But I think it could also very well be considered its own thing. Like, I mean, this deck in general. And I love that decks that have its own system. And even for the cards that do somewhat follow the RWS depiction, it still has this twist to it, which gives a different perspective, or an additional layer, I guess, to the card meanings. and hopefully you'll be able to see what I mean by that when I get into the deep dive later. Okay, I'll also just quickly mention a few points that aren't necessarily cons to me, but things I thought I'd just point out because this is a mini review after all. So the cardstock is on the thicker side, so this is a pretty chunky deck to hold. Yeah, I'll put the thickness of the cards somewhere on the screen, but yeah, I just thought I'd point it out because I think some folks might find it harder to shuffle. And then there's the copyright on the card backs. It can be a little bit distracting, but I don't find it to be an issue because I'm like looking at the front of the cards like 99% of the time anyways. But yeah, that's another thing. And then the major arcana cards have borders, whereas the minor arcana does not. So, you know, for those of you who like a really uniform style and format across the whole deck, this might just be considered a downside. I personally kind of wish that they were all borderless, but I mean, I guess I'm not too bothered by it since it's a dark border that doesn't really stand out too much. And then the last point I guess I'll make here is that some of the cards do lean towards the busy side. There's a lot to look at on some of the cards, and I think that, you know, for people who like a sort of cleaner, more minimal look to their cards, might not like some of those cards as much. So that's that. Let's move on to the deep dive. And because I'm lazy, I'm gonna go through these cards in no particular order, except I've taken out my favorite card and saving it for last. But yeah, this is just gonna be an intuitive interpretation and exploration of the cards. And a lot of this may not necessarily follow what's in the guidebook. So yeah, let's get started. All right, Eight of Wands. I like how this card isn't following the Rider-Waite-Smith depiction. In the Rider-Waite-Smith version, you've got 8 perpendicular arrows, and here you've got a bunch of them just falling down chaotically. So, you know, apart from that typical meaning you get about, you know, movement and acceleration, what I'm associating here with this card is there's that additional sense of chaos. And you see there's this person here, they are just diving headfirst into something before even knowing it. But then you've also got these like little spreading leaves at the end of the wands, and to me that's symbolizing growth and movement forward as well. Okay, next we've got Two of Swords. I like how this is a double-edged sword. In many Rider-Waite-Smith based decks, you've got the two swords sort of like crossing over, forming an X. So I thought this was an interesting depiction of this card. And I'm also noticing the clam over here that is open. And then you've got this silhouette of a circle in the background here. And to me, perhaps it's an indication of some kind of like opening of like lunar influences that are like occurring subconsciously. So it's like there are these influences, lunar influences on the decision that one is about to make here. Alright, next up we have another two, but this one is the Two of Pentacles. I like how this one sort of preserves the typical way it's shown in the Rider-Waite-Smith. You can sort of make out that like infinity that's being wrapped around the Two Pentacles here. But at the same time, this kind of looks like two cells splitting apart, and how, you know, it's like the beginning of growth happening, and from here on there's just gonna be a chain of exponential growth, like from here on. Oops. Okay, Five of Cups. This one's funny because the first thing I see here is a UFO about to abduct some animals, which I'm pretty sure isn't the creator's intention. But anyways, that's what I see, and I thought it was funny how it's just evoked that kind of imagery in my mind. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that in terms of interpreting the card, but like I said, I like how this deck just sort of brings something different to the table. Okay, we have our first major card, Judgment. So in the past, I had a tendency to think of judgment quite literally as like a discernment between the right and wrong, this or that. And what I love about this depiction here is the addition of this sort of like gray circle in between here, and like this connects the white and black sides, this dual, these halves together. And because a lot of the times things aren't so clear cut, and there is this gray area in certain situations. So yeah, I also love this stark contrast in color between the outer world and the inner world. It's as if there's a kind of Zen quality inside happening to bring about that clarity. All right, next is Ace of Pentacles. The way these clouds are positioned, I think, has a slight resemblance to the Rider-Waite-Smith depiction. It's like the clouds are so carefully and gently cradling the pentacle here, and with it being an ace, you know how aces represent the essence and seed of the element, and I feel like this is like a very careful nurturing of this seed here. Okay, Page of Swords. Usually I struggle quite a bit with court cards, but this one was interesting to look at. So first of all, you see the young page at the corner of this card, and they're kind of like leaning on a slant and just kind of using this sword as a support. And it kind of feels like they're unsure about how to proceed with things. They're looking up towards the sky here with these like 4 orb looking things. And as I look more closely, I see this one on the right here as, you know, representing like, it looks kind of like the pattern of it kind of looks like crashing waves. And it just makes me think that perhaps these 4 orbs represent the 4 elements. And because this is a swords card, I'm guessing the one at the bottom here represents air. And then, you know, because it's also situated right at the center of the card, right? And for the remaining 2, I would say the top one feels a bit more fiery than the other one on the left over here. So yeah, like that's how I would assign the elements to these orbs. And I would say that this card tells the page that in order to move forward, they need to stay balanced, whether it's elementally or just, you know, balanced in various aspects of the self, because the path forward is still a bit hazy, it feels like to me. And maybe focus needs to be on the air element. And once that clicks, this black and white circle here, it feels like a switch to me. I feel like things will be able to move forward once that focus is achieved. And another thing that's interesting to me with this deck are these recurring references. So this black and white circle here, it looks a lot like the one in the Judgment card we saw just now. And yeah, remember this circle at this position here, because you'll see a lot of very similar cards with this going forward. And to me, it's like this portal that links all these cards together, which I find really fascinating. Okay, the next card is 9 of Cups. So you see all these circles, layer upon layer, forming this upwards path, and finally you get this moth at the top, which to me signifies a certain transformation, reaching new heights. There's just so much motion and movement in this card. I love how the cups are represented with these circles. Let me see if I can find another cups card here for comparison. Okay, so you see these like yellow filled in shapes inside the circles here on the 9? Well, they kind of look like the top of the cup on some of these other cups cards. And yeah, I just like how this deck keeps things interesting by not using just one single representation for the cups. You've got all these different interesting shapes for different cups on the cards, and not just cups, but you know, as you'll see in the coming cards as well, like you've got different depictions for the different wands and all that. Okay, and I guess while we have the 2 of Cups out here, let's talk about the 2 of Cups. So the colors and textures of this card makes it feel so earthy. It definitely stands out as a very different kind of 2 of Cups to me. What I notice on this card is the color scheme. You've got these green and red stones that are arched on top, and also the mixture of these colors in the background. And then you've got these stones that start out as their own solid colors, and then eventually you'll see that these colors start to mesh. And to me, that feels like the message of two things coming together to form something new. And it's done by going through these two cups in the middle. And to me, it just feels like such a magical process. Okay, let's get the deck back in here. Okay, so the next card is the Hermit. You could say that this is a very typical depiction of the Hermit. You know, you've got them holding the light. But I also think that you can see it's a very different depiction in the sense that the Hermit on this card takes up such a smaller space in the overall card compared to many other depictions of this card. You know, some other ones, the Hermit is just like this main subject on the card, and but on this one, you can see how there's so much more open space here, and I think that really frames the whole situation differently. The Hermit here isn't just following a different path that other people have traveled before, but one that is vast and unmarked. And here, you know, I can see that they could really easily lose their sense of direction here, you know, especially with the dark clouds above. There is no real path here. Okay, King of Pentacles. To me, this king has a bit of a smug look. It's like he knows what his abilities are, and look at all these jewels surrounding him. There's an air of confidence here, and it feels like it's rightly earned through the work that's put in. The fours to me are very much a kind of king energy. You know, in the major arcana, the fourth card is the Emperor, right? And I think the pyramid down here reflects that. And yeah, he's just on this very steady base. I don't know if you can see this, but to the right, there are these like two dark blobs, and it kind of looks like it forms the silhouette of the upper part of a person viewed from the side, and it's like this person is looking up to the king. Okay, Nine of Wands. I do admit this one I had to look up some of the meanings in the guidebook here because I wasn't really sure what was going on with the pregnant lady here. All right, so pausing to reflect, near completion. Like a mother preparing to give birth, you have labored long and hard, but there's still the final push to bring forth a new life. You can smell the sweetness of success. Take a moment to gather your reserves and focus your energy, and the rewards will be well worth the effort. Right, so yeah, so I can see why there's this pregnant lady here. It's definitely an interesting analogy and paints a vivid picture. But I don't know, like I'm just feeling kind of meh about this one. But anyways, I guess, it's impossible, or not impossible, but sometimes you can't like all the cards, right? Okay, the Empress. Okay, this card evokes a really strong, receptive kind of energy here. The flower here, you can see, is firmly grounded, and there's just this really brilliant, strong presence. And look at how this central figure kind of like takes up this whole card, right? This flower is an anchor, and I love how the moon up here is sort of hidden, but it's also peeking out from behind the dark clouds. Five of Wands. Oh, I should talk about this one alongside the Five of Swords, so let me try to find that. Okay, so the way I differentiate between the Five of Wands versus the Five of Swords is that while both of these cards traditionally in the Rider-Waite-Smith are depicted as some kind of conflict, the Wands to me is more so related to like creative energy. So the Five of Wands feels more like a creative battle. You're throwing things out there and seeing what sticks. It's a chaotic experiment, more of a play fight, if anything, whereas the Five of Swords is more like a real external fight. Whether it's you versus other people or you versus like a situation that's happening. And so I love how these cards align with how I view them. And, with the Five of Wands being much more colorful in its depiction to represent that creative aspect, right? And if you notice carefully, these wands here, they are actually made up of this same background color that's happening here. So to me, it's kind of like saying, make use of your environment and surroundings for ideas and creations. And on the other hand, this Five of Swords over here is not colorful at all. In fact, it looks just kind of bleak. And the way these four arrows are all kind of like pointing down, like they're all just pointing back at the person, and it makes me think of something I heard of a long time ago. It's something along the lines of, when you point at someone, you're pointing three fingers back at yourself, and this is what that looks like to me. Okay, we got another Wands card. This one is the Three of Wands, and I'm gonna have to go back to the guidebook for this one because I am not getting much. Okay, so it's about having done the prep work to move onwards. And I can sort of see that now after reading the blurb, but yeah, I guess it's one of those cards where the meaning just doesn't quite gel with the imagery for me. I don't dislike the card though, it's just that I guess the depiction of it isn't quite what the Three of Wands feels like for me personally. Okay, we have the Magician next. This has got to be one of the cutest magicians ever, and I guess, yeah, like I just love how it's a different kind of magician here. You've got the lemniscate up here, which is certainly a nod to the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith magician. But other than that, I guess the most striking thing about this card for me is this transparent bubble. It feels like the magic is brewing within the bubble, and all these processes where the different elements are interacting and combining with one another is within here. And the thing with mushrooms is that they've got this incredible structure that forms like a network through these strands. I don't know if it's apparent down here. But yeah, I'm sure there's like a proper terminology for it, which I don't have off the top of my head right now. And I feel like this picture alludes to that sort of like absorption of nutrients through that structure, or sort of like an osmosis kind of process, of things being absorbed and filtered from the environment through this bubble or membrane, or the other way around, right? So yeah, there's just this very alchemical thing going on here that I feel like is, very hidden from the naked eye, but it is very much happening. Okay, this one is the Eight of Cups, and it certainly has some resemblance to the Rider-Waite-Smith Eight of Cups. But in this one, the subject is like clearly worried, and yeah, they just look distressed. They're still sitting at the base of this mountain over here, whereas in the Rider-Waite-Smith depiction, the subject has already decided to embark onwards up that mountain and journey. To overcome whatever situation it is that they're leaving behind. And it may be easy to overlook, but over here, right at the top corner of this mountain, there's just this very tiny silhouette of two people at the top. And I like to think of this card as a depiction of both the current state and, which is represented by this forefront figure over here, and then the future state, which is up here, that little tiny silhouette. I like to think that it only looks far away, but in fact, that's where the subject, in the current state subject, this is something that they can be. It is attainable. And they need to cross this body of water that's separating the bottom of the mountain with the mountain cliffs and with the way these cups are tumbling down, it might indicate that it could be a messy process. But I feel like with this butterfly around, I do think that it symbolizes there will be transformation happening at the end of all this. Okay. Next is the Queen of Swords. I mean, just look at this queen. This is not someone that I want to mess around with. This queen means business. And look at how she's like literally standing on top of someone here. And the sword is like pointing at that fallen person. And the queen is ready to use it to like take that one final plunge at them. This is an ultimate cutthroat person, or it could represent a really serious and grave situation at hand. I feel like it's saying, that one wrong move, and it could mean the demise of, everything. The Tower. If there was something in nature to symbolize what the Tower card encompasses, I think the volcano would definitely be it. There's so much magma and activity that happens beneath the surface before a volcano finally erupts. And the same would be for someone or something going through that same process. And what's wonderful about this analogy is that, after the volcanic activity, the land around it eventually becomes this, fertile land that's ready for new growth and cultivation. It's enriched with minerals from all that volcanic eruption, magma, ashes, whatever. It presents an opportunity to rebuild. And, the Tower doesn't have to be some kind of, really scary card. It's just putting a clean slate for something new, something good. Next, we have Strength. And I resonate with this particular Strength card so much because, in a way, I see myself when I look at the card. I feel like it's about putting on this huge outer shell for one's own protection. And that outer shell is what makes them look strong and what they want others to see. It's their way of interacting with the world through the persona of, this big, strong bear. But sometimes you'll get a glimpse of what's really inside the bear. And that is someone who may be a bit afraid to show the world the real them. Someone who may be worried about how others will see them. Their not so strong side. And it's tough because oftentimes the world demands us to be the bear. It's either hunt or be hunted, right? But I also think that it takes a certain kind of strength and courage to wear the bear suit as well. So, yeah, I just feel like this is such a powerful card. And yeah, I just feel it so much. Ten of Pentacles. I love this more simplistic depiction of the Ten of Pentacles, compared to the RWS version. Here you get a very clear picture of the abundance that is, central to this card. And you've got this aloe vera plant in the middle, and it is a perennial plant. So I truly feel like there's this sense of continuous and ever-growing stream of wealth that comes with this card. Whether that is material wealth or other forms of wealth. There are also these overlapping circular patterns down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. And these kind of feel like an extension of the amount of abundance this card represents. To me, these kind of feel like little pentacles at the bottom. Okay, next up is Five of Pentacles. Now, the colors of this card, straight away, I feel like sets the tone for what it means. You can feel the hardship and grim situation through the card, and there's really nothing else in the surrounding environment to grasp onto or seek. There's no, nothing that you can seek comfort or warmth in. And I feel like at times like these, the way to go is to look up at the guiding stars. Maybe they will have some answers and be able to lead you the way. It might not be obvious that these guiding stars are there if you're too fixated on the ground. Next is King of Wands, and when I first saw this card, the first thing that came up to my mind was a big heart. And for some reason, this is just, what I get. So if this were to be used as a significator card, whoever this card represents would have a big heart and be a very open person. This is someone who I feels like embraces all of you and makes you feel at your best. It could be a teacher or mentor, someone who just radiates warmth and shines. They might be someone who seems serious and mature. Look at this lion here. And but I feel like there's always this other, less serious side to people that we don't immediately see. And the way these two leaves stick out at the top from behind the sunflower here makes me think that they look kind of like cat's ears to me. Or, maybe I'm just around my cats too much. But yeah, I feel like this is showing that, other side, that less serious and more playful side to them. The High Priestess. So to me, this card is about deep knowledge and wisdom. That's what I feel like these roses represent here. And I just really love, this super detailed line work on the roses. This is the kind of wisdom that I feel like is very internal it's going deep into one's self and learning more beyond the conscious self. I feel like this part with the hand in the middle, it represents that, the crossing between the known and unknown. You've got these little circles in between the two sides, and it's like there's this looping and integration between those two sides. And the way the hand is positioned here makes me, it gives the sense of intense focus. And this pale pink body of water at the back here, to me represents that, the divine feminine. And, it's just an underlying theme of this whole card. At the top, we have this somewhat triple goddess looking like motif here, and that eye is just so intense and alluring at the same time. And for some reason, this reminds me of the saying how the eye is the window to the soul. And I feel like this just, this eye just pierces right through you like some kind of portal. And yeah, like I said, there are so many cards that have this like circle right up here in this particular spot. So yeah, just, keep that in mind. And, I feel like there's so much potential in terms of, readings, using this to link the different cards together. Well, we have another major card. This one is the Wheel of Fortune. So I'm noticing, two ways to interpret this card. So first of all, you've got this wheel in the middle, and it has a certain similarity to the yin and yang symbol. It seems to show that there is a certain universal balance, the way everything is so symmetrical here. And, one way to see it is how this hand down here, it's like it's signifying a surrender to these natural forces. So letting things just run its course. I guess there's less sense of control with that way of seeing it. The other way is, you've got this bright blue sky here at the back. And I feel like it's a positive energy. There are bright outcomes, and you could also see it, this hand, as signifying, taking action, putting fate back into your own hands. You decide the outcome. And so yeah, like I see it going either way, maybe depending on, your reading. And yeah, this star in the middle actually has 10 spokes. So it matches, the number 10 here for the Wheel of Fortune. Ace of Swords. This one is such a positive and colorful card all around. I'm noticing the colorful gradient background with all the greens, yellows, reds, blues. It feels like all the potential is there. And these little white wisps on top of it give it such an airy feel. And then, of course, you've got the central sword here. Like, it just feels so solid and sturdy. And this circle around it, to me, feels like this is the seed that is the Ace of Swords. And it is just so firmly planted and stamped on. Eight of Swords. The first emotion that comes up when looking at this card is anxiety. You know, the eye in the middle here. It looks just so afraid of whatever is outside. It's causing the subject pain and suffering, and you know, you can see these teardrops here, right? And then you can see these 8 spokes representing the 8 swords, and notice how these swords are actually lined up. Right? So it's almost as if they are actually one continuous sword. And to me, I feel like it's saying that these swords are one and the same. What is perceived to be 8 swords can actually be reduced down to 4. You know, so the problems at hand are not as serious as it seems when you're able to sort of reframe that viewpoint. So it might help to break things down into simpler forms. Knight of Cups. What's striking to me about this card are these streaks of red coming from the cups, and how the flower petals are also that same red, bold color. And because of that, I feel like this card shows how the knight has poured their heart and soul into something. And it's quite a contrast relative to, you know, all the other colors on this card. I also feel like the way the knight's body is just sort of covered in this mossy green color. It's like the card embodies a certain relationship or shows an affinity to nature. And I can see how this knight is putting so much care and thought towards the flower that they're growing. The Fool. This one's really interesting because of its resemblance to the Rider-Waite-Smith Fool card. But here the subject has clearly already fallen off the cliff. The way this Fool is still slightly on the edge of the cliff here. You know, there's still this one leg that touches the cliff. It makes it look like it wasn't a deliberate jump, but rather it's like they stumbled over these rocks here. You know, and then they just tripped and fell over. And I feel like, you know, this gives the reader a sense of just how careless this person was. You know, maybe they thought this peacock feather that they're holding was all they needed to navigate whatever or wherever they were going. You know, when someone is blinded by false images, it doesn't matter if there is a trusted companion by their side, because they've already lost themselves. Oh, we have another major, and it is Death. Again, this one I feel like has a certain resemblance to its Rider-Waite-Smith counterpart, more specifically this symbol in the middle here. And it looks like the flower on the flag of the Rider-Waite-Smith death card, but it's not quite the same. I did try to see if this particular symbol here, you know, the way these spokes are arranged, whether there is any significance to that, but I couldn't find anything. The closest thing I could find was the Maltese cross, but I don't think that's what this is. So if any of you know anything about this symbol, please do comment because I would love to know. But anyways, this particular skull to me has a sort of liquidy quality to it. Like these darker parts that outline the skull, to me almost looks like these, you know, wisps of smoke from an incense. It's like this whole cloud. I mean, it's like this whole skull is just a cloud. And, you know, that this uncomfortable symbol of death, you know, is just temporary. I can almost feel like this skull cloud is like dissipating into thin air, as, you know, if I were to like wave into it, like it's just something that would dissipate. At least that's what it feels like to me. And, you know, it does feel like sort of this bad omen of sorts, but once you reach into it, you will find that it's nothing but a dark cloud. Next we have, let's do that. Next we have 9 of Pentacles. Now, there are so many bright and beautiful colors in this one, and I think it's so suitable for it because it feels like in this world, things are aplenty. You know, all the colors are there. You've got these splashes of green, blue, red, orange, purple, right? It's all there. And, you know, things are wonderful. But I'm drawn to the top here, this moth. You know, I feel like this card shows that, you know, despite all that is here, one can go further through transformation and change. But you have to step outside of this safe and known world, that bubble, you know. But doing so can lead to something more that one couldn't have comprehended before. I'm also looking at this human figure over here. They're looking away into the distance, and I feel like inside they want to go explore. They want to step outside this bubble and venture. I also think that this card goes hand in hand with another card, so let me go find it. So the card that I think the 9 of Pentacles card goes hand in hand with is the Page of Pentacles. Now, look at how they sort of like line up here. You know, to me it feels like this continuation, because there's a very similar card setup going on here. You know, you've got the white background and, you know, this sort of like watercolor bubble happening. And here to me, yeah, like it just, I mean, it's not a exact match, but, you know, I feel like this kind of lines up. So it's like this thing, this search that this person is looking for in the Nine of Pentacles, it's like something that bleeds in to the Page of Pentacles, and it's in the Page of Pentacles side that this Nine of Pentacles gets to further explore and develop. So here on this card, the Page card, the universe is their sandbox. There are all these planets and stars to venture into and explore. There's so much room for potential and experimentation. And it's a bit dark, but they are standing on, this piece of rock. So it's a very a very safe and stable kind of environment, at least, it seems to me, for them to be able to let loose and get creative in this new world over here. So that's that. So let's continue on with the Ten of Cups. I feel like these 10 cups here are showing all the memories, the tides that, this couple has endured together to get to where they are today. I like how this depiction is a bit different from the Rider-Waite-Smith Ten of Cups, but I feel like it still preserves some of that meaning of family and lineage, especially through this tree at the back here. Yeah, and then you get this portal again, right? It feels like, one can jump through time with this, and there's a different kind of warmth to this card that I don't find much in other Ten of Cups cards. I feel like this one really shows the endurance and test of time that people go through to get to where they stand today. Okay, we have here the moon. So this is another really interesting one. When I look at this card, I immediately feel like I've entered some kind of foreign realm, a higher dimension of sorts that I don't quite comprehend. You've got these red waves just, forming this circle, and it feels like some kind of higher force of energy. And, the way, this wavy pattern kind of reminds me of the Thoth version of the moon card, even though, this deck isn't based on Thoth whatsoever, at least from what I know. And then you've got this geometric shape down at the bottom here, and it's encasing a circle inside, and then you've got these dotted lines connecting this circular glow above it with, this geometric object. And I don't know, it feels like a projection of sorts, like when you go from 2D into 3D, that kind of thing. So I feel like in this card, the subject is situated somewhere within this circle down here. And it's like this card is representing some form of connection to a different realm. It's tapping into that universe that is unknown to them, some kind of higher knowledge. Okay, we have the Emperor. So this one I did have to look up the guidebook to see what it says, but it did make more sense after reading it. So let me just get it out. So here it says, an accomplished overseer of society, structure, and law. A wise leader possesses infinite eyes and a well of eternal guidance that leads to sustained power and transformation. Your actions are in favor of protecting life, and your rule of law is steady for the foundation of future generations. You are a true architect of your dominion and have the loyalty and support of those around you. Oops. So yeah, I think after reading it, the way this card is depicted makes a lot more sense. And yeah, I think the images on this card really does represent just that. So honestly, I don't have too much more to say about this card, but I guess I will note that the background in this card is just, this very simple gray shade. And sometimes that non-existence of patterns and shapes do also indicate something. And here I feel like it emphasizes that sort of no-nonsense straightforwardness of the Emperor. And also the way the background is shaded, like the left side is a bit more darker than the right side. And, even though it's not a very heavy contrast, to me, it also reflects the spectrum of voices that the Emperor faces. Okay, next is Queen of Pentacles. I think this is such a beautiful card. The Queen figure in this card looks very introspective. And maybe it is because of this reflection of herself over here. I feel like she cares a lot about the things near and dear to her heart. I also feel like she is someone with so much inner abundance and has so much experience to share with others. This is a person with a rich inner landscape and lives life through every inch of her heart and soul. So yeah, that's what this card feels like to me. Next, we have Four of Cups. This card to me tells a story of dissatisfaction and worry. It's pushing one to look outwards for something else. So here at the bottom left, you can clearly see that the person's just not looking too happy. And then this other figure here is like the flip side of that same person. They are in this wondrous state and, looking to be fascinated by the landscape outside. And then you've got, these cups, the way they're lined up, to me it feels like something going off on a tangent. Maybe at first they just felt like this smaller cup that's sitting on the ground here is what they wanted. And then, progressively it grows and just, goes on this curve. It's like if this person continues on this trajectory, the next cup will spill its contents and wake this person up. And I feel like the message here is like, it's about one of taking action to resolve the issue at hand. it's urging the person to remove that glossy filter. And I feel like grounding work is very much needed here. Ace of Swords. Ace of Wands. We already did Ace of Swords. So yeah, this is another really brilliant kind of ace. I love how that it uses this blooming flower to represent the wands, and this gradient background. It just makes everything pop. I love how there's this slight purplish hue to it as well, and it's like the fiery energy is supported by a certain element of spirit behind it. So yeah, just overall a very beautiful card here. Next we have the Queen of Wands. So again, another very intuitive looking queen figure here. And in this one, she feels so at ease. To me, it looks like she is in touch with not only that intuitive side, but also, her subconscious side. This is someone who has that ability to reach into the shadow and draw insights. And, this is symbolized by her, having her hand on this black flower here. And the red shawl that she's wearing, to me, symbolizes action. So I feel like this is someone who would take those insights and process them into something that can be acted upon. Okay, the World. This is such a beautiful card. I know I say that for a lot of them, but I truly mean it. This emerald green color is just so vivid and striking on this one. We've got a whale in the middle here. It's in this crystal clear ocean, and there are these wavy plants on the side, and to me it looks like some kind of seaweed or aquatic plant. And then there's this enlarged human figure. They take up this whole card, and they're spanning from the skies down to the sea or ocean. And I think the way this figure spans this card lengthwise shows the worldview. Like, what I mean is, imagine yourself being this person. The perspective of you looking down at the ocean from that bird's eye view, right? You being so tall that the sky feels within reach. That is an incredible perspective, and you'd be able to see so much from that. Imagine the vast distances that would be visible from up there, right? I feel like this card is a card of being at one with the world and everything around oneself. It exudes so much calmness and harmony. Okay, we have the Knight of Swords. So through the Knight's, his stance here, I feel like this is a card of defense and protection, or it's about being prepared to fight if necessary. And I get that sense from how the sword here, it's already kind of like half drawn out. And so to me, there's so much energy in this card. Like the blade would be drawn at any moment without notice. It's something or a situation that, you know, if it were to happen, would materialize really quickly. And on the other hand, I'm noticing this blue horse down at the corner here. And then you've got this ship up here inside the bubble. It almost feels like another portal around the knight's head. And I feel like these things combined could perhaps signify going on a voyage of some sort, like maybe like soul searching or seeking spiritual meaning, truths, and growth. Okay, next is Justice. This is such an interesting Justice card to me because in a lot of other depictions, it's just this one person that has the ultimate authority, one person that holds the scales. But in this card, we have two people holding the scales together, and there is a sense of cooperation and understanding. You know, look at how the colors in their body are shared and connect through the scale that they hold. It almost feels like there's some kind of transfer of energy or something in a way. You know, you feel how the other person feels. And especially with the winged orb at the top here, it kind of reminds me of the Two of Cups card in the RWS depiction. That feeling of unity, you know, there's no tipping of the scales here. The experience is shared, and everyone grows and blossoms from mutual understanding. Next is Seven of Wands. Now, traditionally in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Seven of Wands is someone standing on top of a hill, you know, sort of having a battle with the other six wands. It's a very active battle. It's a very brute force kind of energy. In this Seven of Wands, though, I feel like it teaches us to battle in a smarter way. So first of all, notice that, notice the seven wands here, okay? They're all very sharp with, you know, these blades and these spiky bits facing out. And it's easy to get hurt dealing with them. But if you look closely, this very last sword here, it's not quite the same as the others. It doesn't have those spiky points. It's not the same kind of wand as the others. And what this says to me is that, you know, instead of going head on with the opposing force, try being one of them or blending in. You know, like it makes me think of spies infiltrating and exposing something from the inside out. You know what I mean? Like, because, you know, if you were this last wand, you don't have the same kind of spikes that the other ones have. And going head first would probably get you hurt. Another thing that I see that also kind of tells a similar tale is this orange triangle at the top, and then versus this striking blue stream. One might be inclined to think that this triangle represents fire, but the inverted triangle is actually the alchemical symbol for water. So instead of water clashing with fire, maybe a little disguise can make the clash less damaging. Set up a space and boundary and direct those energies into, something else that could benefit everyone. Yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense to any of you watching this, but yeah, it's just how this card presents itself to me at the moment. Next is the Chariot. So I'm really used to immediately associating the Chariot with forward motion and energy. And it's so easy to forget that it's actually a card ruled by Cancer and hence associated with the water element. And I think this big crescent at the top here is a great reminder of its association to that more watery side. And what I see here is this oversized moon balanced on top of just this one single wheel. And to me, it creates a bit of an unease and tension. It feels unstable, right? It feels like letting that lunar energy dominate or go into overdrive mode. And that will cause certain mechanics to break down. And that's where these intense sparks come in. So I feel like this card is telling us to take a more balanced and steady approach. All right, next is Seven of Cups. So to me, this is another UFO abduction kind of card. And I can't remember what the previous one was, where I mentioned the UFO thing. But anyways, I think it was the Five of Cups. But, jokes aside, this card to me is a very real temptation kind of situation. Unlike the RWS depiction where, the person is just looking up at all of the different tempting options up in the clouds, this one is literally someone taking you by the hand and showing you where to go, leading you into that temptation. They've already led you into this rainbow fantasy land, and you might not even know it. So I feel like it takes that much more strength to overcome this type of situation. 10 of Wands. We saw a very similar looking card earlier. I think it was like this one right here. It was the King of Wands. Right, so yeah, these look very similar, but I do think they have some differences. Okay, so if you look at the Ten of Wands over here, this is one comical looking lion. Like if you compare the two, right? The lion in the King of Wands is just clearly so much more mature than this one here. To me, at least. The Ten of Wands is typically a card associated with hardship or, a difficult situation. One that is being overburdened. But, with this Ten of Wands over here, it makes me wonder if this situation came about from foolishness and just being a little bit scatterbrained. There's this little smirk on the line that makes me think that they aren't really taking the situation seriously and just letting these 10 wands fly everywhere in all sorts of directions. Like they're not even trying. The yellow background here makes me think that the subject still thinks everything's good. There's no sense of urgency at all to do anything about the situation. Look at how at ease and comfortable they are lying down. And, I don't want to say whether it's a good or bad thing. On one hand, you could say, hey, stop lying around and do something, right? Or you could be, just let them be. They're happy with the way things are. Even if it's not the way you see it, right? You think it's all messy and scattered and, something should be done, but, it might not be the case for them. Maybe, yeah, they're just like happy with the way it is and like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, this is what this card feels like to me. So that was the Ten of Wands. Okay, and now we have the Devil. I've seen some other people's reactions to this card, and some people think it's a cool card. Others aren't as much of a fan of it. I don't really know how I feel about this one. I get a weird feeling from it. I feel weird because of the Devil's like upside down head, how they are riding on a goat that's clearly too small for them, and their feet that just kind of look like hooves. Yeah, just all of this combined gives me this weird dissonance kind of like feeling like something's off. But let's get into this image a little bit more. So the devil is naked and they're clinging onto this goat's horns. It's kind of like driving a car to me, but it feels like they're letting the goat guide them instead. And I believe there is a contrast to be made here. The fact that they are naked makes me feel like they don't care at all about how they're seen, which on the surface appears to be, a very bold move, yet they are clutching so tightly at the horns like they are afraid of something. This whole situation here is just really confusing and contradictory. And maybe that's just how some things are. Next card, King of Swords. Now, if you're familiar with the MBTI personality types, the type that I associate this card with is the INTJ. Everything's methodically organized and categorized. They've all got their own, little compartments here. It's a card of intellect and thought, logic and reasoning. The thoughts are what fuels them for the most part. Things operate in a pretty much black and white environment, as you can see from the color scheme. And you know, they do have a heart though. You know, it's right here. Even though it may not be in, you know, a very obvious place, but once you're able to reach it and find it, you'll be able to slowly see the color in their world. King of Cups. Now, this is such a contrast to the other king we just saw. It's much more soft and gentle. You know, if the King of Swords was someone at their prime, let's say, like, say, a middle-aged person who's really honed their skills and is an expert consultant in their field, then this King of Cups feels like a much more mature grandpa kind of card. So it's a different kind of king. This grandpa feels like someone with so much more wisdom and patience. You know, there's someone who will take the time to understand and listen to you and be able to give you advice. You know, it feels like someone that will tell you stories about their experiences. You know, it's a different kind of knowledge, and it's a different kind of approach to interactions. Eight of Pentacles. I love these crystallized shapes that are used to represent the pentacles here. They also kind of look like snowflakes as well. The Eight of Pentacles is about, you know, that hard work being paid off, mastery within your domain subject, and how it shows and manifests in the world around you. It's a display of your talents, right? And I feel like the way this card is depicted shows that very much, because you've got these beautiful pentacles displayed, you know, representing that incredible talent. But also notice how there are these similar mini versions of these pentacles that are on the torso of this person here. I know it might be a bit hard to see, but it's there. Maybe I'll get a close-up of it to show you all later, but it just feels like it's a part of who they are, and that they have fully embodied all of these skills, and it is something living and breathing inside of them. And to me, it's also about, you know how I mentioned like the snowflakes earlier? I feel like the fact that no two snowflakes are ever the same. Through this card, it represents just how incredibly creative this person is to reach this stage. I think it speaks to how their creations are truly unique. The next card is Temperance. So, you know, many people start off their tarot journey using the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I was certainly one of those people. And for the longest time, I understood it. You know, I understood this card through that Rider-Waite-Smith depiction, seeing how there was one foot in the water and the other one being on land, and then interpreting that as having a need to be grounded, you know, to tame the emotions. But as I learned more about tarot, you start to find all these hidden layers of symbolism and other references. And for some people, it can be a fun process to discover new things. But for a beginner, it's easy to miss out on additional meanings, or, the symbolism might just be too much. So, for me, one of the things I missed out on for the longest time was the alchemical symbol for fire on the Temperance card in the Rider-Waite-Smith. There is an interplay between fire and water, which I did not realize. So, what I appreciate about this card here is that it makes that imagery very apparent, with the mixing of the rainbow solution from one flask to the other. It shows very directly and clearly that exchange. I also really like this other flask here at the top. I think it shows another angle about this fire and water energy exchange, where it's not just something being mixed and combined, but how it refines another. It's like when you heat up a solution and in the end you get, these crystals or elements. It is a process of bringing out something that wasn't apparent before. Okay, next is Ace of Cups. And I'm seeing that slight resemblance to the RWS version of this card. In its composition, having this bird over the cup here. It's interesting to see that we have another portal situation happening here. I really think there's something about these portals all being in this similar spot on the cards. So yeah, I really feel like the reader could leverage this in readings, and yeah, I'm looking to explore that further. Okay, this one is the Seven of Swords. It's definitely one of the more scary looking cards in this deck. I don't think there's a whole lot of that in this deck, but you know what? It's actually not that bad. But it certainly brings up a certain kind of emotion, a sense of danger. And, what I find interesting about this card is, again, unlike the RWS depiction, it brings out a different meaning, an additional overlooked meaning. So, in my opinion, the Seven of Swords isn't just about being sneaky or deceitful, but it's from that deceit, one can further derive meanings of self-sabotage and manipulation. The two faces here, to me, are like two sides of the same person. One is calm and composed, the other one being aggressive, this aggressive beast that sometimes takes over. And the difference between, when each of these two sides are dominant can be night and day. As you can see from the sun and the moon on the top there. So depending on which one of these sides is acting, I feel like the outcome from that could be drastically different. And one must realize when the beast is taking over and regain control of the situation. Sort of like, I'm just trying to sort of tie things back in with the initial feeling of danger that I get when looking at this card. So yeah, I feel like letting the beast take over could be of danger to the person or situation that this card represents. Next up is the Hanged Man. Now, I'm not sure if there is any particular significance in representing the Hanged Man with a rabbit or hare, but nonetheless, I do like animals in my cards, so this is something that I welcome. Now, of course, there's the obvious subject in the card here, but there's also a silhouette of another rabbit in the background, and if you look even closer, the pool of water down here is also like a reflection of this rabbit. And so from all of that, it's easy to gather that this card is all about the reflection of oneself, through that very literal mirroring of one's image here. And then with that added layer of the shadow, seeking further into the shadow self. Okay. Next is Three of Cups, and this one is a very pippish looking Three of Cups, and I'm not really sure if there's much for me to say about this card, but I do like how there are these white crescents that sort of cradle the Three Cups here. I feel like it gives a sense of support and also gives it, sort of a bit of a lunar magical vibe to this card. This next card is Knight of Pentacles, and this is another one where I've had to consult the guidebook a bit, and the guidebook interpretation says things about doing things using the tried and true methods, doing things by the book, having a dependable nature and having integrity. And to me, I feel like the integrity part is what really speaks to me the most. And to me, this knight is someone who will speak the truth. And I get that from how they have their hand on top of this book over here. It's kind of like, when you have to swear on the Bible in the court of law, and it is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So to me, doing the right thing is something that runs throughout this knight's soul and essence. Okay, next is the Hierophant. Now, I struggle with this card so much. Not this particular card from the deck, but just from, the Hierophant archetype in general. I just don't really connect with it, and this particular depiction also didn't really do much for me personally. After reading the blurb in the guidebook, I can see where the creator is coming from. It's the teacher of knowledge, a keeper of traditional wisdom, and you can see the keys there. And then there's something about this flame representing the undying flame of tradition. So there's nothing wrong with this card in particular. It's just that I guess it doesn't make me feel anything too much when I see it. This next card is Four of Wands. So I love how this card brings the focus to more of a community kind of setting, rather than the very traditional family structure with the two parents and two kids in the RWS one, right? So other than that, I think it stays true to the typical meaning from the RWS version of this card. It's a bright, happy card, and one of stability, and yeah, again, the portal. So yeah, I'm really gonna have to gather all these cards with portals and just kind of like see how they go together. Okay, Queen of Cups. This is another very intuitive looking queen. If anything, this is the queen that is most in tune with her intuitive side. So the Queen of Cups being water in water, right? You can see that representation from the triple moon at the top. You know, and this is a queen who is sensual and enjoys the finer things in life, right? So you've got all this drapery going on and these jewels all hanging from it. I think it's a message of allowing and permitting yourself to those nicer things if you've been holding back. So yeah, just be generous to others and to yourself as well. The sun. Now there's this huge glowing sun at the top, and from it you can see this beam of light radiating from it, right? And this beam of light is in all the colors of the light spectrum, and there's just this intense brilliance to it. To me, this sun is shining its light on everything it reaches, illuminating all things and making things seen. And it's very much a card of enlightenment, but this light has its limitations. And the feeling I get from this sun card is that it illustrates a very simple and direct kind of illumination, almost like enhancing what's already there and what can already be seen. But this is the kind of light that will not bend and curve into the deep dark crevices that are hidden. There are certain things in the shadow that it cannot reach, and it also definitely cannot reach those aspects in one's core that have intentionally been shielded off, maybe. So yeah, that's what this card looks like to me. Next we have Nine of Swords. So there's the main subject in this card, and you can tell that they are deeply worried and disturbed. And then there are these 9 swords or blades that are directed in their way, splitting apart their world. I feel like the way these swords are pointed at her bring that sense of immediate danger, and it makes me fear for them. You've got this huge pair of wings at the top, and it just feels like this bad omen looming over the person. And I'm noticing how it spans across this whole sky. It's an overwhelming presence in comparison to the main subject, and it speaks to how heavy this whole situation is. Next is Page of Cups. Now, I love the sense of playfulness going on here, and I feel like this card is just about having fun in what you do. Over here in the middle, you can see, I think, what is a dragonfly, and in my mind, I'm just visualizing the way they dip in and out of the surface of the water, and to me, it's like an embodiment of, dabbling in different things and just enjoy being free to do so and have fun with it. The next card we have here is the Three of Pentacles. Oh, this one's also flipped over. Yeah, so the next card is Three of Pentacles, and unfortunately, I don't have too much to say about this one. I mean, yes, I see the community aspect of this card, but I think that's about it. Not that I don't like it or anything, but it just doesn't particularly stand out, I guess, compared to some of the other cards. Okay, the Lovers. I touched upon this one a little bit before in an earlier video. I can't remember which monthly wrap-up it was, but so you may have already heard me talk about some of the things I'm about to mention, but I do think there are a few observations that I haven't spoken about yet. So yeah, to me this card tells a tale of the lovers in union. You can see how their stems are kind of like entangled, intertwined with one another. But I do feel like the two overlapping circles at the back here are worth mentioning, and the way they're positioned, right? So it's a partial overlap, and I feel like this signifies how in any relationship it's important not to lose oneself. So there are parts of you that are shared and connected with one another, but then there are other parts of the self that remain you. You don't need to morph into something to fit the whole circle. I feel like it's a reminder not to let a relationship engulf the whole you. And I'm not really sure how well you can see this. On the left, you can see there are two hands holding one another. And on the upper right, there are two figures embracing one another. So I feel like these are reminders about support and just being there for one another in a relationship. Okay, Page of Wands. This is such a beautiful card. It's got so many elements happening here, and it's come together to form such an organized chaos. I feel like this is exactly the kind of energy the Page of Wands gives, because there's so much happening, and they want to work on this thing and that, and and then you get distracted by something else. There are just so many wonderful things surrounding the page, and that kind of high energy level and quickly moving from one thing to another, to me feels like it's very much that Page of Wands energy. There's also this planetary object at the top here, which at first glance felt like the moon, which it could very well be. But then later I was thinking maybe, could it be a solar eclipse? And if that were the case, maybe it could suggest a need to tame down that fiery wand's energy a bit. Or maybe the wand's energy is currently slightly blocked or neutralized by some kind of water element. So yeah, just this is such an interesting card. Okay, next is Knight of Wands. Now there's a sense of seriousness and commitment, I feel like. There's determination on this person's look. And I'm noticing the shape of this body here. They kind of look like lungs. Yeah, so with all that combined, like, I feel like this knight has decided on something, like whether that is a path or a course of study or something, and they are going to be living and breathing in it. You know, whatever this is, I feel like it will be a theme in the long term, and they are going for it. Next is Four of Pentacles. When I see this card, it makes me feel like this person is living in their own world. All these colors flowing within this person. You know, you've got these pentacles happening outside, and they're just kind of like falling through, and like this is stuff that's happening in the physical world. They're just dropping down, and it feels like this person has no real intention of catching any of them, even though there's already one within reach. I don't know why, but this card makes me feel like there's some kind of disconnect between the person and the world. It feels like their heart is somewhere else. The Star. So I'm drawn to the motion of this star just shooting right up, and knowing how the Tower card precedes this, this card almost feels like some kind of after image of that. I'm noticing how this card, the star has 8 spokes, and the star is number 17 in the major arcana. So if you add up the digits, you get 8, and so there's an alignment there in terms of numerology. There isn't really a whole lot happening in this card, and you know, you've got these beautiful little stars surrounding the main star, but that's it. And I feel like it's that lack of dense details that gives this card such a tranquil feel. You know, like compared to the one we just saw, right? Like, yeah. Or even like, what was the other one? The Page of Wands, right? So you can just get a feel of how incredibly calming this star is. Next we have the Two of Wands. So the first thing I see is a person who is contemplating, and of course with many of the twos, you know, you get that sort of duality, this or that kind of message. What's interesting to me are the 2 wands on each side of this card. To me, they form a kind of doorway to something. So in the Rider-Waite-Smith version, you get a person looking outward, and in this card, you get sort of like the reversed perspective of that. So I think that's very cool. And I love how intense the red is, and all those little dots at the end of the branches here feel like something is budding and growing. So yeah, one last thing I guess I want to say are, you know, these circles at the top here, they kind of look like the one we just saw in the Page of Wands, right? So if I just find that card again. Yeah, so you see the resemblance, right? Except this one, it feels a lot more subtle and blended in with the background. And I feel like it's reinforcing the idea that there are things happening in the background to lead up to something new. Okay, this next card is Three of Swords, and I know this is one of those cards that a lot of people don't typically like for its associated meanings, but if you look at this one, to me it actually feels very ethereal and otherworldly. You know how some bands or other music groups break up due to, creative differences, right? This is what this card feels like to me. You've got this pain that's coming from all different directions, and you can just feel it piercing through by how there are these dents being formed on this sphere. Yeah, I just like how straight to the point this card feels. So I'm going to go back to a few cards that I've skipped that I briefly showed in the beginning but haven't quite talked about yet. Okay, so first we've got the sixes. Overall, I feel like if I had to put like a tag phrase for this card, it would be life is sweet. It wasn't very apparent at first, but once you look closer, you see these little circles on the cups here. Well, actually, they're little treats with sprinkles. So, yeah, I mean, like this one is a donut. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, so my conclusion for this card is just life is sweet. Six of Pentacles. I like how this one is completely different from the RWS version. I never really liked that one because it just felt like people begging for something. But here it is such a springtime card, and there's just so much growth and abundance here. And look at all these brilliant bold colors, right? Everything is happy and abundant. Okay, Six of Swords. Again, this was one of those where I had to look at the guidebook, and in it, it talks about renewed hope, which kind of makes sense, I guess, with the flower on top here against the moon as the background. But then after looking at it some more, I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm noticing the chaotic swirl in the background here, and then you've got these like six swords flying in from the sides. It's like this really messy situation, right? And then you've got the two people down here, but I actually feel like they're one and the same, except maybe the one on the left is just the before version of this person, and the one on the right is like the version that came out stronger, or after having been through whatever this situation is. So it's definitely a really interesting Six of Swords to me, and another, deviation from the Rider-Waite-Smith version. Okay, Six of Wands. Now, typically this card is associated with victory, and I think it's apparent through all these wonderful wands you've got floating up here. But to me, this Six of Wands isn't without its merits. To me, this person has had to grow their plants through the cracks of a rock, and you can see, this weak and fragile stem that comes from it, and it feels like an underdog type of situation. And they've gone through so much to accomplish all of this. So I feel like this is a card not just of victory, but it's victory achieved through tremendous efforts. Okay, we're getting near the end. This one is the Seven of Pentacles, and like I said in the beginning, I feel like this one stays true to the RWS version in a sense. So, you can see this person pondering and looking back at all the beautiful pentacles that have been created. So I'm noticing how these seven pentacles are all connected to the object in the middle, which to me looks like the moon. And so I feel like all these pentacles here are things that have been created not just as a result of hard work, but there's a layer of feeling and emotion to all of this. Perhaps it's a passion project that this person has put all their heart and soul into. And now they're just kind of looking back and wondering if everything's been worth it. Okay, so Four of Swords. Again, it follows that RWS style in the sense that you immediately see the person at rest, but they're not lying down and making you wonder if they're dead or not. I love the rose detail here, and to me it's like a little protective amulet helping them to get through this difficult phase. And the red stuff around this person's head, I don't know if it's meant to be like their hair or what, but I feel like it's something brewing underneath it all. Like from the outside, we see a person in a cloak, and the surrounding environment is all like gray and everything. But actually, inside there's activity happening beneath what we can see. All right, so this is the last card, my favorite card from this deck. And I don't know if you guys have been keeping track of which card I haven't talked about yet, so it is the Ten of Swords. It's not usually a card that I would like, but I love this portal in contrast to what's in the foreground here, and how someone has very intentionally placed these 10 swords around the animal here, which I presume to be dead. It feels like a ritual has taken place to send the spirit of the deceased animal into wherever it needs to go. And maybe, it could be through this portal here. And it just feels like the process is complete. So there's a sense of care and respect for what's happened, I feel like, and it's just something I really like. I just realized I forgot to film sort of an outro to this video, so anyways, I really enjoy working with this deck because it's just really easy to pick up and start working with it, without a whole ton of intense study. But the deck still has so much to give. And, you know, I feel like the guidebook is just right. You know, sometimes when I don't really get one of the cards and then I read what's in the guidebook, I can see where the creator is coming from. So that was really good. Yeah, just overall, like, positive experiences. I mean, I don't really like every single card. There are, you know, a couple that you've seen me talk about where I just didn't really feel anything for, but overall, I still really, really like this deck. So, yeah, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on any of the cards. So, yeah, I hope you liked this video, and I guess bye for now.